Welcome to My Fractal Body. Today marks the beginning of a brand new project for me. I have been doing manual therapy on people, and I'm much more interested in teaching people how to alleviate pain or discomfort in their own bodies. For me, when I'm working with clients on resolving chronic long-term pain or discomfort, mystery pain, and also working with people with brain injuries, I have 7 rules that are necessary to follow in order to accomplish our goals. The first one of these rules is that fascia is one structure. Fascia has become a popular topic on the internet lately, and a lot of things that people say are correct, but in that information, one specific piece is generally missing from what people are talking about. They know it's a connective tissue, they know it supports the body, they know it connects things together, but it is actually just one contiguous structure. It is like a 3-dimensional lattice grid that everything that is solid in your body is embedded in. So it goes through your muscles and it surrounds individual muscle cells as it goes through the muscles. It goes through your bones, it goes through your organs, it goes through literally everything that's not hollow in your body, your skin, your brain, and it surrounds the cells of those tissues as it passes through. One of the big problems that arise when we talk about chronic pain or mystery pain, things that have been going on for decades in people's bodies, is that fascia is the internal splinting mechanism that your body uses to inhibit movement to allow you to heal. Okay, it has a memory. It doesn't know where it should be. It just knows what it considers normal. So if you roll your ankle and your ankle gets stiff, what's happening is your fascia is binding you from the inside, and it's preventing movement so that your body can heal. But if you had a more significant injury or a significant emotional injury, like some sort of trauma, for example, your fascia, in order to protect your body, is going to start binding. And it can do, like if it's an emotional trauma, it can do your entire body. Like I've worked with people who said they had something happen to them and it felt like their body shrank. And my response to that is, the fascia is literally doing that. You're describing it accurately. But if the injury or the trauma is significant enough and the body maintains that internal splinting for long enough, that will become what the fascia considers the new normal. And so when you start to move out of that, it will pull you back into that. And you need to get that to release in order to recover from the injury or the trauma. As that continues to hold, it will pull on the fascia around it, because remember, it's one structure. And so the fascia around it will develop a new memory of being pulled towards this initial injury, and it will try to brace itself on something because it has another job. So like, for example, if you have a fascial binding right here, these are called adhesions essentially. If you have some fascia binding right here and it's pulling here, this fascia is getting pulled to the center of your chest, but then the fascia that's in here on your arm is going to start grabbing in here, and it's going to keep spreading out, and it's going to create like satellite points throughout your body. And a lot of times when you're working with fascia, where the pain presents is not where the initial injury was. Your nervous system is really good at telling you what it considers to be the most significant threat, and that's going to be the weakest, most exposed, or most compromised area. And oftentimes, we start to restructure that fascia, we find out that the pain moves, and the pain moves here, and the pain moves here, and it can be a really demoralizing process to people. But what we're really doing is we're tracking the adhesions or those satellite points in the fascia to a point where it started. And so it's actually a good thing when you have a new pain show up. And so taking this one structure idea into account is necessary for everything that we're going to do. So it's the foundation of the 7 rules. The second rule, when you're dealing with chronic pain or mystery pain, is that the nervous system considers laxity a threat. It is getting tight, it is binding you, it is inhibiting movement for a reason. So when we're in these situations, we do not want to relax into stretches. It's okay to put yourself in the posture of the stretch. What you want to do when you're there is ask yourself, how much soft tissue engagement can we get? Okay. Then you ask yourself how subtle that engagement can be. You are never going to choose off when you're in a supported position. When you're doing this kind of work, you're going to put yourself in the position, and isometric holds are your best friend, because when you're doing that in the position, the muscles that you're using are going to start to get tired. Your body will naturally start to recruit tissues around, and what you want to look for is tissues that are off, and you want to turn them on. So the first thing you have to, it's unknown unknown. The first thing you have to do is feel them turn on. So you get in the position, you search for activation. When you're doing this, your fingertips should be active, your toe tips should be active. You're looking for balance in your body, and you're literally using the soft tissue in your body to hug your bones in and then expand outward. You're never going to move into pain. So if you're doing this and you get to an area where there's pain, you're going to pull back a little bit, come to a less exposed position, and then you're going to do the same thing. You want to get to the edge of where the pain starts, on the side of it where there is no pain, and then you use deep breaths and relaxing exhales to move through that and find engagement. As the thing, whatever, as the tissues that are off turn on, you'll find more balance, and then the tissues that are clenching to compensate will relax. And this is how we're going to move through the pain and get deeper and deeper into the range of motion. And that brings me to the third rule, which is tensegrity in the human body. Tensegrity is a word, just a combination of two words, tension and integrity. In the muscle cycle, when people are working out, they imagine a lot of times that there's a contraction phase and a relaxation phase. And that is correct to an extent, because muscle tissues are designed to contract and then let go, but you should not be relaxing. We just talked about laxity perceived as a threat, and now we're talking about in isometric holds, and now we're talking about movement. We do not want to search for laxity. We do not want to relax when we're dealing with chronic pain or mystery pain that we're trying to resolve. We want to have active elongation in the muscle. So we want to have a contraction and an active elongation. And what that active elongation is fascial support of the muscle. So we are trying to become aware of our fascia. And that is 100% possible. I'll probably talk about it in a different video, but I can feel my fascia in my body. And that's because I had a brain injury, which is why I discovered all this stuff. And I said that this will also work for people with brain injuries, in addition to the chronic pain and the mystery pain. For most people, the active elongation is an unknown unknown. So we are always searching for activation, like we talked about in the previous rule, but we're searching for activation on the elongation cycle of the muscles, and it will come. All the stuff that I'm talking about right now is not learning something new. It is innate to the human body. So really what we're doing is we're trying to get our body to remember. All of this stuff is in the subconscious. The nervous system has done it before. This was happening naturally inside of your body before whatever caused the chronic pain or the mystery pain or the brain injury. So we just have to search for it in the movements. And I'm going to have a whole series of movements and talk about it later on. So you don't even have to worry about that right now. And you also don't really have to worry about remembering everything in these rules, because as we get to a point where we're going to address them in movement, I will say them over and over again, because I know it's a lot for people to remember. The fourth rule is that all movement in the human body are sets of spirals interacting with each other. There is no linear movement in the body. And when I say no, I mean no linear movement in the body. If you want to take that into a deeper realm of quantum physics, there's no linear movement in the universe. It's just something to think about that's interesting. The idea of linear movement misaligns our body. And we are going to talk about that in the fifth rule in a second. But there are 8 major spirals in the human body. We have from the index knuckle to the shoulder on both arms. Think about it, internal and external rotation. So if you put your hand in front of you and you roll it over, you have to ask yourself where the point of rotation is happening on your hand. A lot of times when I ask people to do that, they're rotating around their pinky knuckle, which means that a lot of tissues are not on because it's not in alignment with the spiral. You want to be at the index knuckle when you rotate around, okay? In the legs, you have from your hip socket down to the big toe ball mound. And talking about linear movement, I will make a video about how shoes force you into a linear gait cycle. Not all of them, but most modern shoes, the way they design them, gets people to walk from heel to toe. And you ask people what their foot's supposed to be doing when they're walking, and they say, I put my heel down and I roll over my toes. Well, your toes should not be weight bearing. Your foot should be flat on the ground. And a true gait cycle, the way the body is naturally made to move, is a spiral of supination and pronation. As you put your foot down, it's supinated, and all the weight goes on the exterior arch. And then as you move to the interior arch, your weight transfers across the arch of the ball of the foot. And then the weight pushes into the big toe ball mound. And then that big arch that everyone's familiar with, the medial arch, is a giant spring that launches you into your step. Your toes are for gripping and balance. There should be no weight bearing on your toes. You shouldn't be rolling over them. And you should definitely not be walking heel to toe, because now you're teaching your fascia to do something that is a linear movement. And it completely interrupts the spirals, and it makes, just like laxity, your nervous system perceives it as a threat because your body's not moving correctly and you're not doing anything to adjust that. And so it literally starts protecting you from yourself by inhibiting your range of motion. And this is a big reason of why people get, get tighter or stiffer, but why they lose mobility as they age is because society has them moving in linear patterns, which is not the way the human body should be moving. Now we talked about that there are 4 spirals, and there's 4 more. There's from each hip to shoulder along the spine, okay? So either side of the body. And then this is where it might get a little complicated. There's 2 overlapping sets from the pelvic floor to the crown. So the first 6 that we talked about, there's internal and external rotation. So there's actually 2 spirals in each location that we talked about. There's 16 rather than 8. There's 8 sets. But there's 4 spirals, 2 sets from the pelvic floor to the crown. And that is because if you're talking about external rotation down the center of the body, you can externally rotate both directions, or you can internally rotate both directions. And that may seem counterintuitive, but you can totally externally rotate in one direction, right, and internally rotate in the other, and that's the twisting of the spine, which that makes sense to people, right? But if you're to spread open like this, you're having 2 external rotations, or if you're to fetal in like this, you're having 2 internal rotations on each side around the spine. So that's a whole separate thing too, but when you're talking about repatterning the structure of the fascia, you need to move correctly in order for it to release and realign. And so this is something to incorporate into the movements, and we will talk about that as we get to those videos. The 5th thing is that the subconscious thought controls movement patterns. So the way you envision movement, the way you think about movement, is the way your subconscious is going to try to move your body. And then why I mentioned this earlier, for example, we talked about the walking and the shoes. If you think that your gait cycle of your foot is putting your heel in the ground and rocking over your toes, that's what you're going to do, right? That's what your subconscious is going to try to make that happen. So it's really important that when we start doing these exercises, or we start working on dealing with the chronic pain or the mystery pain, talking about what should be happening in the body and doing it over and over and over again so that it becomes ingrained in the people's minds. I read in a college course on marketing many, many years ago that the average person, if they hear something 15 times, they will believe that's true for the rest of their life. And so, and aside from this, is if somebody's saying something to you over and over and over again, you need to ask yourself why they're saying it to you over and over and over again. But when we're doing this work, I will say these things over and over and over again so that they become ingrained in your mind. And I'm telling you openly that that's why we're doing it, because that's the right thing to do. But if you want to heal your body and get out of these cycles of chronic pain or mystery pain, then there has to be some sort of mental reprogramming in order to get that knowledge into your subconscious, so that when you're walking around, you're thinking about, or you don't have to be thinking about how your foot's being planted on the ground and how that is moving through a spiral through your legs. And like I said, we'll have all sorts of videos on everything that I'm talking about here, how to pattern this stuff into your mind, how to pattern this stuff into your body, and then how to get strong once you have done those things. The sixth rule is that the fascia itself is a quantum antenna. And that can get really complex. But essentially what happens is fascia surrounds itself with H3O2, which is a phase of water. But it is essentially kind of gel-like phase. It's a crystal structure still, but it is continuously sending and receiving information in the quantum world. And quantum physicists study it. You can search it on the internet. You can learn all sorts of stuff about it. But the important things to understand about that is that the H3O2 water exhibits quantum properties. It has coherence, it has biophoton emissions, quantum entanglement, and it's involved in cellular communication and energy production in all living systems. And so the number one thing I want you to get out of this is the reason why it is important to stay hydrated. Do not get dehydrated. Your body will rob this water if you're getting dehydrated. And this is the reason why after you get dehydrated and you go inside, you drink, or wherever you're at, you drink a bunch of water, it doesn't rehydrate you for several days, okay? Your body converts regular water into H3O2 to surround the fascia and also your DNA when it breaks down infrared radiation. So as our bodies developed, the major source of infrared radiation was the sun. A lot of people aren't getting sun anymore. They're sitting inside all day. They're watching TV, they're going to work, they're working in an office. And so your body is struggling with keeping the fascia hydrated. And this is why infrared products have become huge on the market. People use them and they feel better. They don't really understand why they feel better, but they're like, I'm going to do that again. And so they have infrared saunas. They'll go get subscriptions to have these treatments that are very expensive, but you can just buy some infrared thing if you're not getting enough sunlight. When I say getting enough sunlight, I mean your skin needs to be exposed to the sun. You don't go outside all covered up with sunscreen on, blocking everything. You need the infrared radiation in order to create this H3O2 water that your body needs to maintain the tissues that support everything in your body. And so at the end of this video, in the description on this video, I'm going to post a few things you might be interested in. When I'm working with clients, one of the things that almost every client asks me is, what are some resources that they can use to learn about fascia? So I'm going to put the book in there that I think is the best book I've ever read. I'm going to put a second book in there that is about establishing new habits if you have a hard time doing new stuff. And the reason why I say that is because that's normal for people that have been dealing with chronic pain and mystery pain. I've worked with people who have been in pain for 50 years or had something happen to their body, and I ask them how long they've been dealing with it, and they're like 50 years. They believe it's not changeable. And then we can change 80% of it in 90 minutes. And so the acceptance of that pain a lot of times leads to depression or apathy or lethargy in life, and that creates a situation where it's very hard to develop new habits. And so I'm going to put a book in there that really helped me to re-pattern my thoughts in my mind. And so if that's useful to you, you can find that in the description. I'm also going to put some links to some infrared products that are recommended that you can figure out which one is the best for you to incorporate into your daily life so that you can get more hydration in your tissues. And that leads us to the seventh rule. The seventh rule is that pain does not equal gain. When we are doing this work, we never want to move into pain. Remember, the pain is a signal to our body that something is wrong, okay? If we do not honor that signal, our nervous system isn't going to address it. That's just how the body is. What it's going to do is compensate more since we're not honoring the signal. Now, if we get to the point where we start to feel pain and we pull back and we only operate in the area where we feel good, your nervous system is going to say, oh, there's something wrong there that I need to address. And since it's not compensating for what you're doing, it can start to address the problem. And this happens because fascia continually repatterns itself to support the movements that you're doing. And so if you're moving in the range of motion that feels good, and you're moving to the edge of pain, and you're practicing the isometric holds there, and we're searching for activation, and we're asking ourselves, how can we have more subtle activation? And then we're using our breath to expand into the area where there is pain. We are going to start developing fascial support in those areas. So we want to be very gentle with ourselves. And a lot of the movements that we're going to talk about, especially in the very beginning, they're subtle. And I tell people, if they do the movement one time and there's pain, they stop. And then tomorrow they do the movement again. And if they do it one time and there's pain, they stop. If they do half a rep every day, we will make progress. Okay, it really boggles some people's mind and it seems too slow for people, but we need to start moving towards that range of motion. We need to start building fascial support. We need to start releasing fascial holding. And over time of the consistency, which is the most important thing, your body will start repatterning the structure of your fascia to support what you're doing. And as you do that more and more, it'll get stronger and stronger, and it will begin to hold. You have to remind yourself, if we're talking about chronic mystery pain, that you've been dealing with this for a very long time, right? We have nothing to lose in moving slowly. So we are going to move really slow. We are never going to push into the pain. We're going to respect any pain signals, even discomfort. Don't hang out in an area that's uncomfortable. We want to teach our nervous system that what we're doing feels good. So we want to hang out in an area that feels good. And then as we do that and our nervous system begins to trust us, it will stop doing things like protecting us from ourselves, like I mentioned with the linear movement of the foot. This is a new project I'm working on. I've mostly just done manual therapy and working with people one-on-one. So for the time being, please ask all the questions you have in the comments because I will have plenty of time to answer them. As time goes on, if that changes, we'll have to come up with some other system of communication. If you would like to book a one-on-one session with me over the internet, you can find that at my website, myfractalbody.com. A fractal is just a structure that repeats its patterns over and over and over again, and that's what fascia does. That's where the name came from. The most important thing to remember is that if we follow these 7 rules, it is inevitable that we have results. The fascia is continuously changing. All we have to do is learn how to change it. And part of that is becoming conscious of it. So the information that I'm going to release on this channel is essentially going to be, how do you become consciously aware of your fascia? How do you move it with intent? And then how do you change it to support your daily life? If you found this interesting, please like and subscribe to support the new channel. Thank you very much.